Hi there. So, for those of you who don't know what this is a tutorial to colorize black and white, or also known as vintage images. Now, you can do this with any kind of black and white images, whether or not you take them with your cell phone, whether or not you scan them in, it doesn't really matter, but the higher quality, the better result you're going to get, usually. For this one, I used a Union General called Joseph Hooker. Now, for the most part, I'll just let the video play while I go over and tell you what it is I do before it happens, but it's going to be sped up so much that it's going to be slightly hard to follow, but I will try my best. You will need Photoshop for this, and you will need a brush at hardness 10%, including erase and normal brush tool. So, well, anyway, I'll just roll the footage for the first couple of minutes, and then I'll talk a little bit every now and again. Have fun. Now, before we start with anything, what I'm doing here is I'm just editing level and contrast to really what the image looks like. Then I take a level, CE1212 is the color code that I use for this. I use soft light and 14 to 15% hardness, or sorry, opacity, and I color in every single part of the face, including some of his eyes, to not have the eyes stand out white. So once that's colored in with red, I take a layer of, whatever color really. Remember, all parts of the skin needs to be colored here. I take a level, another layer with same or a little bit more pinkish red, and add it to the cheeks, nose, and ear area. Sometimes to the mouth as well, depending on how thick and full his lips are. Then I take a 100% layer and I add color to his lips. Now he doesn't have very thick lips, but it doesn't matter anyway. Then I take a blue layer with 40% opacity and I add it to where his beard would be and darker areas of the skin, and then I add a 20% brown to the entire image. And now this guy, I know for a fact that Joseph Hooker was blonde, not starlit beach blonde, but blonde enough for it to be noted by his fellow officers. So I give him some color here, but this is not the finished product at all. Now, his eyes are blue. You can tell because they're very clear. They're not darker. They're very, very, very clear. And I have another Photoshop that I use to copy colors over. So it's nothing more than uniform color as well as skin, gold, and background. The background is in Matthew Brady's particular studio was from my limited research and talking to Bob Zeller was apparently light blue, and this I've been reflecting in almost every single colorization I've been doing so far, at least the ones that Matthew Brady has been doing. It's a very, very neutral grayish blue anyway. By pressing G and pressing on the outlined, not yet colored areas, you get a paintbrush tool, like in Paint. Anyway, I add a little bit of yellow to his forehead because males have this, females not so much. And then I add a layer of 100% opacity, yellow and pink, with a 20% brush, depending on how much I want. Yellow is for the fatty areas, and pink is for the areas that have more of a, like the earlobes. They have very thin skin, but a lot of blood running through them. Same with the nose, the raised edges of the ear, and also the eyebrows. And then the skin color. Now, skin color is different from person to person because of their complexion. Take Abraham Lincoln as an example. Abraham Lincoln had a very, very dark complexion, as noted by himself, not by any historians or outside sources. And obviously skin color goes on everything. And then what I like to do is I like to just turn down the opacity way, way down on both on the lip color, and then turn down the opacity of the skin by about 50, or turn up the opacity of the skin by about 50, and then add the skin color with a toned down brush onto the hair to make the hair more vivid. And that pretty much helps tremendously. It basically makes sure the hairline is completely non-existent. And then is a darker blue to the uniform color, because he is a Union officer. Make sure not to hit the gold areas at all, because it'll look discolored. Now, buttons and also the shoulder boards were gold on Union officers, but the stars inside the Union officers' gold or shoulder boards were not actually gold. Now, I believe it's from major and upwards that's silver. Everything below is gold. Now, don't quote me on this. I might be wrong. But again, Alt and clicking on the actual layer mask is great for telling where you have mistakes. And once you've colored in the entire thing, basically add a hue saturation layer, at least for the clothes, and turn up the saturation to make sure it looks right, because it was a little bit flat earlier. Now, I also lower the darkness on this because uniforms were actually almost black when they were pristine. Now, he has been through some wars. He's been commander of the army. I believe it was the Army of Potomac. Some might be able to correct me on this. So he was in the field a lot more than a modern commander or a Grant when he was a lieutenant general, for instance. Anyway, the gold is being added before I finish off the uniform anyway. And once the gold's added, it's fairly simple to tell how the entire image is going to look, and I can then adjust the uniform from there on. Now, again, the stars on generals anyway were silver, and yeah, I do go in and add a little bit more skin color to the parts that I felt were missing slightly. Also, I erased some of the background that might have been caught on the skin. I add a little bit more yellow to, sorry, not yellow, a little bit more blue to the stubble area. And then finally, I duplicated the layer of uniform that I already had. Now, I never actually duplicate because it usually makes the edges look a little bit funky, but for the most part, it's kind of necessary. Anyway, here's the finished product, side by side. Left is obviously before picture, and the right side is the after picture. Now, this particular image was a little bit harder to work with because it was a little bit lower quality, but ZusaGaming.minus.com is where you can find all my stuff. Also, my subreddit, r/colorized history, also has about 100 images by now, I guess, and they're all from different periods of time. But I have specialized in the American Civil War after I fell in love with it. But I'm rambling anyway. I've been talking for the past 6 minutes, and I have to upload this, so I won't bore you with the details anymore. Anyway, if you have any questions, you can YouTube me, you can email me, you can write to me on Reddit. It doesn't matter. I'm always happy to help you guys. Thank you for watching.